All right, man. So obviously the title is why I love this swim bait, and these are not swim baits we're talking about today. Obviously we're talking about the big soft plastics, and as you can see, you know, there's the outlier right there. There's a few outliers, but one of my all-time favorite brands, the brand that I feel like excels in this category, is Depths. So it's mostly going to be a conversation about all these Depths baits, but with a few others sprinkled in. And you know, to me, swim bait fishing down here in Florida, it's not every day you're going to go out and throw a glide and get bit, or like a, you know, a big soft paddle tail like the working class zero style baits. So to me, you know, as a kayak angler, I bring two setups. So when I'm swim bait fishing, the other rig that I have is usually a big soft plastic rig, and these are the baits I'm throwing to target those bigger bass when they're just not eating those swim baits, because it's just, that's the deal. It's kind of my 1-2 punch, you know, the yin and yang of swim bait fishing. You know, the Scottie Pippen to the Michael Jordan. It's like you can't, it's the two together are magical. One without the other is great, but not as great as it could be once you kind of have the two elements together. Ooh, is that a bite? Oh, there's a bite. There we go. Oh, that feels good. That feels good. That feels good. That's a nice one. There we go. Oh, that's a nice one, dude. The old Magneco rig putting in some work. Look at that. Oh, that's a nice one, dude. Oh, God, completely hoovered it. Come here. Come here. Yes. Look at that one, dude. Oh, yeah, look at that. Completely hoovered that 13-inch Kinku airworm, and my hook like poked right on the top of the snout. Right in the good meaty portion, dude. That is a nice one, dude. That's a fucking tank right there, baby. All right, dude. No better place to start with than this guy right here. This is probably my favorite. I don't, you know, I'm a huge Neko rig fan. I remember when I first discovered, you know, fishing the Neko rig, you know, obviously I was just using a 5-inch Senko, and I literally had that tied on for like 2 straight years. It's like I never paddled around without it in my hand. It was insane. It just catches so many fish. Just such a crazy rig that catches bass. And so what better, you know, than to have a giant version of that, which is exactly, to me, what this guy is. The 13-inch Depths Kinku airworm. This guy right here, you can see, I will tell you, this is a, you know, as far as rigging, pretty simple with this bait. There's a spot in the middle of this bait where these little tentacles, these little bottom like tiny baby feet stop right in the middle of the bait. So that's where the crossover ring goes, right there, the VMC crossover ring. I think I'm using a number 5. You could probably try, I wouldn't go any bigger than a number 5. In fact, I might suggest at times go into a number 4. And the reason is because on the flip side of that, I'm using a 5/16 ounce nail weight. And I will only go down to a quarter. If I'm fishing shallow and maybe it's not windy, I'll go down to like a 1/4 ounce on the nail weight. Generally speaking, I'm rolling with this 5/16 ounce just because I'm in a kayak, man. I'm getting blown all around, and it's just easier for me to, you know, have that heavier weight to maintain bottom contact and know, like, you know, kind of feel what's going on down there, have that heavier weight. So point is, I fish this on some pretty, you know, heavy gear. So whatever Neko rig hook you like, make sure it's a beefy version of that. That's kind of my suggestion for this style of Neko rig fishing, the old Magneco rig. And the beauty of this bait is just, and we're going to have some underwater footage so you can really see what I'm talking about. But it's just the all these little chambers on the back, they kind of catch air. So when you throw this out there, these little air pockets make it so that this bait stands, basically when it hits bottom, it's standing straight up on bottom. Like, it does not, this bait does not slump over unless you probably let it sit there for long enough. But it really has just such a giant presence on the bottom, you know, wherever you're fishing, because of how long it is and the fact that it does stand straight up. And you know, rigging the crossover ring right in the middle, you got all this tail right here to have all kinds of action as you're working it. So dude, just such an effective rig, just a giant worm. And dude, 1 pound bass, you give them long enough, they'll shove this whole thing in their mouth. They'll suck it in. You'll catch a lot of dinks doing this. You catch a lot of giants doing this, which is the whole point. You know, the whole point of these bigger soft plastics is I want to target, you know, swim baits aren't the deal for that day. I still want to target the biggest bass that swims in the lake. So that's kind of why I'm saying about this 1-2 punch. Ooh, is that a bite? That looked like my line jumped. Dude, there we go. There we go. There we go. Yes, yes, that's a nice one. Oh, there we go. Hammered the old free rig, dude. I somehow, just lucky, I was looking down and I saw my line jump. I'm not a big line watcher, but I just happened to see that one, dude. This fish completely hoovered the old free rig. There it is. Oh, okay, almost. There it is. That is a nice one. The Doe Live Beaver, the Magnum size, upsizing the old beaver for a nice bass, dude. That's what I'm talking about. That's the power of the old Doe Live Beaver free rig right there, baby. All right, man. Here's one of the oddballs, but this one has to be included because this is my just bona fide, day in, day out, my Magnum free rig bait. You know, the 4-inch version is the OSP Doe Live Beaver, the Magnum size. And I do fish, they make smaller sizes. It starts at 4 inches and then I think it might go to 3.5 and 3. You know, so if I'm fishing conventional, I throw the 4-inch size. And just the beauty of this bait is the action you get when you're throwing it on a free rig. It's just, I don't know, man, it's unrivaled. You know, obviously it's got these crazy big appendages that are kind of hinged in this way. You can see how it slops over, that it has that dolphin kick. So these appendages are going to have that up and down kick. You know, they're not fluttering like a crawl would. They're not fluttering this way. They have that distinct like dolphin kick. So that's pushing a lot of water. You know, you get that thump on the way down. And then as soon as your bait, you know, so this bait, as it's swimming down when you make your cast out there, there's just something about it. The magic is when it gets to the bottom, it just settles out and kind of has this subtle fall down. You know, it doesn't have that dolphin kick all the way and hit bottom. It gets to bottom, and right before it hits, it evens back out. You know, it gets horizontal, and then just has this delicious little shimmy fall. I don't know how the hell they designed this bait to make that a reality. It's fucking amazing. There's just no way around it. Again, dude, I don't do anything else with this bait. You could probably use this as a jig trail. You could do a million different things with it. This is a free rig bait for me. If I want to throw a giant free rig, dude, this is it right here. And not to say it's the only bait that I will, you know, we'll get to that later, but this one, you know, just like the Kinku Airworm, the 13-inch is strictly for me a Neko rig bait. This Magnum Doe Live Beaver is strictly for me a free rig bait. All right, so now we're getting into it, like, a little more versatility. You know, we're going to talk about some baits that I'd probably mix it up with now a little bit more. And next up is the 7-inch, the depth rebound stick. So this bait's kind of like, I do Neko rig this bait. You can see this one's hooked up for a Neko rig. I got a VMC. I think this is a number 6 size crossover ring. And this one I'm rolling with a 3/16 ounce weight, because that's plenty for me to get this down and stay down. It's the heavy enough weight that I want to be. You know, I go the bigger weights on the Kinku airworm, but this 3/16 is kind of my sweet spot for this one if I'm going to Neko rig it. But just besides that, you know, this is kind of like if I'm Neko rigging this, either maybe I didn't grab a bag of the airworms or what, you know, or maybe I just want to downsize a little bit, still have a pretty big worm, but maybe I want to downsize, maybe I want to get bit that day, you know, fish aren't reacting to that, we're going to downsize a touch. But the other beauty of this bait is just treating it like I treat it a lot of times. It's a very dense plastic. You can see it's very bulbous on either end. Great for weightless, you know, just put a EWG hook in it, pitch it weightless. I'm probably going to use a 5/0, 6/0 EWG hook with this. And then the other magic with this is a power shot. So, you know, power shot, for those of you who don't know, it's like, it's just a drop shot, but you're upgrading all of your tackle. You know, you're throwing it on heavier line, beefier hook, that whole thing. And this bait definitely excels in that realm. It's got a nice little hang, you know, on that power shot rig. It hangs really well. It's just got such a beautiful action. So, real versatile bait. You know, not as big as some of the other ones. So if I want to get bit, or if I'm, you know, really going to power shot, this is my guy right here. Ooh, there we go. There we go. There we go. Oh, there we go. There's a nice one. Dude, there's a nice one hiding back there. Oh, dude. Holy shnikes, dude. That fish was way in the back. Way up shallow, dude. Not where I'd think they'd be spawning, because there's not a lot of light back there. She probably might be hanging out, waiting to spawn. Look at that fat pig, dude. Look at that fat ass pig, dude. Hey, look at that. That is not a tiny worm down in there. I fish a lot of grass lakes, a lot of eelgrass, a lot of hydrilla, and maybe I just want to drag a worm around. You know, basically, I'm thinking in terms of like dragging like just a Texas rig Senko with a weight attached, with a bullet weight. This is the guy right here, the 8-inch Death Adder. So basically, this is a giant Senko to me. You know, that's how I'm treating this bait. Same with the rebound stick. You know, you can just put an EWG hook on it, throw it weightless, and it has that shimmy Senko fall, which is a beautiful thing. Generally speaking, if I'm fishing this and I'm dragging bottom through grass, I'm really going to have a 1/16 to an 1/8 ounce weight. You know, a real light weight gets me down plenty good enough, you know, without being too heavy. It doesn't get me bogged down in the grass because I'm not using heavy weight. And because you're using that lighter weight, especially like if you're using a 1/16 ounce weight, unpegged by the way, that you kind of, as you're dragging it or giving it pulls, you're getting nice little glides with this bait while it's down there on bottom. It's just kind of down there gliding around, you know, looking real natural, just real tasty, just a little delicate treat down there, gliding around for a big bass that's real lethargic, especially like I said, colder weather, wintertime. You just kind of drag that around. It's just gliding around down there. Easy meal for a big bass that's hanging in those offshore grass clumps to just suck up and booyah. So another glorious thing, just a glorious thing about this bait is it is a beefy bait, but it's got this really distinct groove in the bait. So you can really, like, I throw this with generally like a 7 or 8/0 hook, which is pretty big hook. I wouldn't claim that that's necessary, but I like that. That's a beefier hook, a real big hook that fits this bait well. And this hook slide in this bait is a good, like, deep hook slide. So when you rig this bait weedless, I don't have to expose the hook or anything in this bait. I just leave it in that hook slot that's in this bait. You can see it's a very deep hook slot, and it just holds really well in there. It doesn't pop out real easily. Even if you're jacking this thing through grass and stuff, it just stays really weedless really well. Just such a great idea, just because it is kind of, you can see the side profile. It is a pretty tall profile for like a, you know, what I would consider a Senko style worm. So just brilliance on Depth's part to make that hook slot pretty deep, because it can afford to be that deep, and just keep your hook hidden. And I don't have issues with it coming out when I, you know, like I said, I fish all this stuff on heavier gear. And so when I'm jacking these fish, you know, throwing on 20-pound line or whatever, I don't have any problem with a big, beefy, you know, meaty 8/0 hook coming out of this bait and getting a good penetration for a hook set. So just another, you know, great bait. A lot of these baits come in smaller sizes. Like, you know, you can get the death adder in smaller sizes. People like to use them for like chatterbait, spinnerbait trailers and stuff like that. This one's just kind of sits on its own for me as like a standalone kind of big Senko version. Oh, that's a bite. There we go. There we go. Come on, baby. Does he have it? Oh, dude. Does he have it? There we go. There we go. Come on, dude. There it is. All right, man. To complete the agenda, especially with the depth side of things, dude, right here, you gotta have a bluegill, large bluegill imitation soft plastic. These have, you know, I believe, to me, this was like the original one that I really saw. This is the first one that I was noticing out there. And that's the Depth's bull flat. This is the 5.8 size, the largest size that they make. You can see I have it on an EWG screw lock hook. So, you know, I'm just gonna rig this bait up real quick and put it on a big swim bait hook. You can, there's a flat side to this bait, and then there's more of a rounded side. You can rig it either way. However you rig it though, when you pitch this out there, it's still gonna have that kind of circular spiral fall. Has a beautiful horizontal fall to it. And then once you get it down on bottom, you can just kind of give it little hops, and it'll just have kind of like that Depth's death adder. It'll just kind of have these glides down on bottom, unless you rip it up bigger, and then it'll have more of that spiral fall again. So super deadly bait, you know, when the bite's tough and you just want to marinate something down there, get something down there in the fish's face. Dude, great bait. A lot of brands make this style bait nowadays, and but this one's awesome. I love this one. This is my go-to day in, day out. Again, they make the smaller sizes, great for jig trailers and other things. You, man, probably even chatterbait trailers and stuff like that, if you want a beefier profile, if you were fishing like a chatterbait. But this guy, right on its own like this. The other thing I will do, and same principle with the action, is I will free rig this bait as well. So instead of the screw lock beast hook, I'm just gonna have it on a regular like 6/0 EWG hook on that free rig setup, and you pitch it, the weight will go down to the bottom, you know, standard free rig protocol, and that bait will still have that spiral fall, but it'll just be a little more contained because it's kind of being restricted, you know, with your line and that where that weight is. So just, you know, a little different application that still gets the same action with this bait. Couple more that I really just like as of this past year just started messing around with these, and both the bluegill style baits. We got the Nori's 5-inch flip gill and then the 5.8 bellows gill, right? Yes, the bellows gill from G-Crack. A lot of big bluegill just up shallow moving around. So in honor of like trying to, you know, capitalize on that aspect, I really started getting into Neko rigging the bigger bluegill style baits, and these are the two that I've found I like to mess around with. It's a little more complicated, I feel like, when you're fishing these on a Neko rig, like not just the rigging but also the fishing in and of itself. The thing I utilize with both of these for the hook is that G-Crack makes these little plastic, like little spear point tab gimmicks that are called the Neko hack, and it's basically like a little tab. You can see you run it through the plastic of your bait, and on the other end there's like a little bit that sticks out. You can see there's like a flat tab on this side that has these two prongs that kind of bite into the plastic, and then it'll poke through on the other side. I've snipped off the excess, but there's a little plastic bit right there that you can stick your hook through, so that way you're not shoving your hook through the plastic, and if a fish comes up and shakes, you know, you're not just jettisoning a plastic every time you get bit or something. So it's a way to like kind of lock that hook in on these. You know, like you can see on this guy, I doubled it up. I found that it helps to have two. These little bits of plastic, they're not the strongest things on earth, so you know, if you're just running one, they break kind of easily after a while. So you like to run two, and then you have both of them that you can run your hook through both of them. I would definitely suggest running two in these baits. Same thing, man. I've been sticking with the 3/16 ounce nail weights to get these down. Plenty of weight to drop these to bottom and keep them down there where I want them to be. You know, throwing a Neko rig has really been like a kind of straight tail worm thing for me. So it's really easy to work. The thing that you're gonna get with these baits, you get, because of that wider body, that denser, you know, flatness of the body, and where you're pulling your bait from, you can see my hook is like set right in the middle of this big flat plane of the bait. So you're getting a lot of resistance as you're pulling this bait. So it's just something to get used to. You know, it's definitely, it feels like it's really difficult to get it going and stuff, but it's down there working. You know, if you pitch it in the shallows around you and start working it, it'll feel like you're not doing much with it, but you really are. You really are moving it, and it's getting plenty of action down there without being too crazy. You know, so the flip gill has these little appendages, so, you know, as you're working this flip gill, those two appendages are down there working. So what really drew me though to the bellows gill is kind of the opposite effect of what you get with that Nori's flip gill. We get a lot of resistance, and you're gonna be moving it slower on bottom because of that resistance. You get the bellows gill, and you know, standard G-Crack, it's got all these kind of individual, the way it's, you know, these little tabs, there's like a main center that runs down the middle of this body, and off of that, the bulk of it are these little like appendages that are kind of individual. So when you're working this guy, you know, water can pass through the body of this bait pretty easily because of those appendages and how, you know, kind of spread out they are. So you don't get as much resistance with this guy. Maybe it's a little easier to work and kind of like easier to work a little faster and feel what's going on. So just another, you know, just something different, man. Showing the bass something different. Always a fan of that. Messing around with new stuff. So These really cool Neko rig deal. If you want to Neko rig something different than a straight tail worm, I highly suggest, you know, a bluegill style Neko rig like these. All right, so gear wise, man, everything is thrown on this setup right here. We got a pretty standard, you know, this is a do everything setup. I throw like my mid-size paddle tail swim baits on, you know, like 6-inch mag drafts, that kind of size, 6-7-inch size paddle tails. Jigs I throw on this setup, so just it's kind of a do everything setup. It's real sensitive. It is a frog rod. It's the Megabass Destroyer P5. It is the poker, so we're rated up to 3 ounces. Covers me with everything I want to do. It's got plenty of sensitivity for that bottom contact stuff. Throwing it with a, you know, really standard 6-speed Shimano Corrado. And I'm rolling with 20-pound test fluorocarbon line. You know, you want a rod, obviously, bottom contact stuff. You want something that's sensitive so you feel everything that's going on as you're working those baits. 20-pound fluorocarbon. You could drop down some if you like. We got a lot of grass here that I'm ripping these fish out of and stuff. 20-pound, I got plenty of confidence that if I get them, I get a good hook in them, I'm getting them in. So there you go.